Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we're going to take a look at a box full of dinosaur figures, and you can see it's by a company called Joyin, or at least I assume that's how you say that. And it says that it is Cretaceous dinosaurs. I actually purchased this box for about $20, and it is said to have a whole bunch of dinosaurs in here. As you can see, they're showing quite a few on the front there, and one of which actually looks like a Brachiosaurus, so that would not even be a Cretaceous dinosaur. And then of course we've got a Pteranodon over there, which is not a dinosaur, but regardless, let's open the box, see what we got inside. So once you initially open the box, you have a ton of different dinosaur figures all just kind of chilling here in plastic. We're going to pull each one out of the plastic, take a look at them up close here, and see which species we've got. Okay, so the species that we got, the first one here that we'll bring in is an Allosaurus. So there's a very cool looking, and it actually balances out, which is pretty impressive, Allosaurus. Then we've got a Triceratops. Whoops, we left over the Allosaurus. We've got a Triceratops, which also actually looks pretty decent. And a smaller Triceratops, so I'm assuming maybe a juvenile. We also get a Raptor, which appears to be very Jurassic Park-ish, so a Jurassic Park style, I assume, Velociraptor. Then we've got a Brachiosaurus, which we've already stated is not a Cretaceous dinosaur, but we also have an Allosaurus, so we're past the point of these being Cretaceous dinosaurs. We've got a little Tyrannosaurus Rex, which appears to be heavily inspired as far as its paint goes by the Jurassic Park 3 Ceratosaurus, or at least in my opinion that's what that looks like. Then we get two different Stegosaurus figures, which are pretty decent looking. Again, not terrible. We also get two Spinosaurus figures. I'm starting to run out of room now, and now they're falling over because these guys do not balance at all. And we can tell, obviously, at this point that the sizes of the dinosaurs are not in comparison to each other. They are not to a specific scale. We also got two Pteranodons, and one that's very surprising to me, a Therizinosaurus, which I did not expect, like, at all. And a large Tyrannosaurus Rex, which just knocked some stuff over. So we've got that. And that's all the dinosaurs that are included in this set. There is, however, a few other random little pieces. You've got this little side of a mountain that comes with some eggs in a nest. You've also got another little side of a mountain that has a tree kind of deal going on. Another very small rock formation. And a nest with some eggs in it, which I actually like. This is pretty nice. But these others are okay. They're just not really that great. I guess it's just something fun for kids to play with if you're going to play with your dinosaur figures. So let's go ahead, get a nice close-up shot of these guys, and see how decent they are. So here is the Allosaurus. You can see that the sculpt is fairly decent. It's definitely got some very good detail and sculpt in it. It's not amazing. I'm not going to do a very thorough look at the sculpts of these because there are so many dinosaurs in this group that I think it would just take forever to do each one and you'd be here for the rest of the day. But the overall appearance of this is not a bad looking Allosaurus. As far as the paint application goes, it's definitely pretty sloppy. I would say the primary body color here being a mixture of blue stripes with a purple upper side and then a green lower side, and then it transitions to a lighter green on the underside. That looks pretty nice. I definitely like it. I think the colors mesh pretty well. It's not exactly the most realistic color scheme, but it still looks pretty good, and the paint applied is nicely done with an airbrush, so it looks very realistic. It looks like body color and not paint. But there are certain areas, like if we look at the eyes, that eye is really sloppily painted. The tongue appears to be pretty sloppily painted. It's just a reddish coloration, and it's only on the top, not on the sides. The teeth are pretty sloppy. They're kind of all over the place. This eye also looks pretty bad. And the nails, you can see the nail paint has run up onto the finger there. And over here on the other finger, those ones are a little sloppy. Even the toenails are also pretty sloppy. So the overall paint application isn't that good. And you can also see, looking at it, that the leg here on the bottom is a little bit warped. So I'm thinking with a lot of these figures, they're probably going to have difficulty standing. And I think hot water, cold water trick will probably be your best friend if you buy this set. I also think that maybe some paint application on the skin flap on the inside of the mouth could have been nice, but these aren't the most expensive figures. As I said, $20 for the entire box is the going rate for this, so you can't expect too much, and I already got a decent bit of paint on this actually, so I'm fairly happy with the paint application, and it's just a little sloppy in certain areas. Now we'll look at the Stegosaurus, and I think the Stegosaurus overall has a pretty appealing look to it. I definitely don't mind the paint. I think it looks okay. It's something that's sort of fairly realistic, but in a very flashy way, and again, it's very nicely airbrushed on. I like that they actually even went to the point of kind of giving a blue up here on the top, but halfway through it transitions very nicely and naturally to a brown, and you can see all sorts of green throughout, and then you've got a lighter coloration like almost a yellow here, and then some blue as the primary body color. So there is a good bit of paint that's been applied. All the nails appear to be painted again, but they are a little bit sloppy. You can also see that the beak was kind of attempted to be painted, but they ended up just kind of painting half the face, it looks like. Well, maybe not half the face. Actually, this side looks a good bit better, but it's like a grayish coloration. The eyes look okay. Yeah, they're not too bad. The eyes look better on this than they did on the Allosaurus. And then you get back here to the spikes. The one spike is really quite warped, and the others look okay. There's not really any paint that's been applied. It's just kind of the same thing. They just kind of ran paint down, it looks like, because you even get the brown stripe on the spikes as well. But overall, I think the sculpt of this Stegosaurus is pretty nice. I kind of like it. It's not an up-to-date sculpt or anything. It doesn't look as good as the Safari LTD one does, but for being a cheap dinosaur figure, it's not bad. And then this is the other Stegosaurus that is in the set. I think it's the same sculpt. It definitely looks like the same sculpt, or very similar sculpt, and it's pretty sloppily painted. Same deal with the gray up here in the face where the beak is, and the eye paint has actually just completely surrounded the eye. I don't think that was done on purpose. I think that's just some sloppy painting. And again, there's actually 3 different colorations on the plates of this one, and you can see some fairly decent sculpt work in the actual plates, but it's all fairly basic at the same time. The paint on this one looks a little better as far as realism goes. It's not quite as flashy, but at the same time, it's still kind of sloppily painted. Same deal on the plates here. You can kind of see the purple has, there's like this purplish pinkish color here, and you can see it's kind of run off onto the spikes and everything. So sloppy painting, but it's not that bad of a Stegosaurus, just kind of bad paint application. The Brachiosaurus, which is very small for being a Brachiosaurus, has paint in the mouth, a nice bright red, which seems to be the same thing they've been doing for all the dinosaurs that have open mouths. The teeth are actually painted, and so is the eye, and none of that actually looks that bad. I think the Brachiosaurus has definitely got a goofy look on his face, but it's not terrible. As far as the detail goes, it looks fairly decent, actually. It's not exactly a very good Brachiosaurus, but it looks okay. I'm not a fan at all, I can say that, of the coloration. The coloration of this actually kind of gives me the feeling of like a 1980s couch. Like you would see like this kind of browns and greens, and there's like flowers that almost looks like here on the side, or like leaves. It just really gives me the feeling of like a very old couch that maybe my family or someone I knew had growing up. But the actual sculpting of the Brachiosaurus has some pretty darn good detailing to it. Some nice scaling going on in there, lots of skin folds, pretty nice musculature in both the legs. Well, all 4 legs, but I can only see 2 on this side. Nails are painted. They don't appear to be too sloppily done. And overall, I just think the only area that I don't really like is the head. I think the head sculpt looks strange, but the sculpt overall looks pretty decent. Just the paint application, although it looks natural and looks nice, like the way it's applied, it's just not a very good color choice, I think. Then you've got the Spinosaurus, which is not very good. He's kind of an ugly Spinosaurus. He's very small also. I'm not a big fan of the color. It does have an articulated jaw, which is a plus, but the teeth are pretty darn sloppily painted, and so is the tongue. Looks okay, it's just not painted on the side again. But the teeth are absolutely horrendous. The paint is everywhere. Both eyes look to be pretty nicely painted. There is some nice paint application on the body, but I'm not a big fan of a blue Spinosaurus. but I think the paint that is applied looks pretty good. And again, it's all done, it appears, with a nice airbrush, so it's very nicely done as far as the way it's applied. When it comes to the primary body color of the dinosaur, it's just not the most appealing color scheme. And the sculpt is okay. It's decent. It's a very small and kind of an ugly looking Spinosaurus. Now you do get two Spinosaurus figures. Again, the same issue with the paint. The paint on the teeth are just terrible. It's actually all the way up on the face on this one. The eyes are... okay, this eye here is looking down. This eye is looking up. So I'm assuming this guy's cross-eyed, or just has something going on here. He's really curious what's down on this side, really curious what's going on this side, so maybe he's like a chameleon or something. But I actually like the paint application on this one better. I love the nice dry brushing they've done over it to really bring out the detail. The sail looks pretty nice, and even the paint application on the face with the kind of like a pinkish color and the orange, like brown type lower jaw. I think overall it could have been a really nice paint job, but they got really sloppy in the teeth and the eyes. The claws look pretty sloppy as well. The sculpt itself isn't really that great. It's the same sculpt as the other Spinosaurus, so it's pretty ugly, but the paint application on this one isn't half bad. As far as the body color, it's just the smaller things like teeth, eyes, all that are pretty bad. Then you've got this small T-Rex, and I think this one looks absolutely atrocious. The paint is applied too thick. It doesn't really look very natural. It has a really odd bright gloss to it, and just in general really looks quite bad in my opinion. The sculpting looks okay as far as the small details go, but I feel like it almost looks like a bootleg figure because it looks like the detail has kind of been washed out with the made, I don't know. Again, the teeth are really sloppily painted. The tongue is actually a different coloration than the others, but it's also really quite sloppy. So the addition of an articulated jaw makes it kind of fun. Kids might like these, but as a collector, they're not so great. The nail paint is really bad. Look at that, runs all the way up on the toe. So the paint application on this one is just quite terrible, and I'm not at all a fan of this Rex. Then we've got the Raptor, and although he does have quite a goofy look on his face, it's not terrible looking as far as the detail. Again, it's got some pretty decent sculpt, very nice skin folds and wrinkling running down the neck. It's got some nice long Velociraptor arms, and the hands are painted pretty nicely. As far as the nails go, same goes with the nails on the feet. They don't look great, but they don't look terrible either. I'm not a big fan of the paint scheme either on this one, but it's not the worst. It's not as bad as some of the others. And overall, it's got a very, very Jurassic Park feel to it. And that's one thing I can respect about it. It's not that bad, actually. I kind of like this one. Definitely one of the better figures out of the entire bunch, even though it's not the most appealing paint scheme. It's still a fun Velociraptor and makes me really feel like it's a cheap knockoff of a Jurassic Park figure. Then we have the Pteranodons. And this one, although it's not the most appealing Pteranodon sculpt, I think the paint application is actually really, really nice. The beak is painted really beautifully, the eyes look fairly decent, the tongue looks okay, and all the paint applied looks really natural, really nice, and very quite realistic. So it's unfortunate that the sculpt itself isn't that great. It does have some nice detail and everything throughout the wings and the body. It even appears to have pycnofibers and everything, but it's just a little bit of a goofy looking Pteranodon, but really not half bad. I kind of like this one. Probably one of the better figures as far as paint application, that's for sure. And then you have this other variant of the Pteranodon, which is again the same sculpt, but a much brighter type of a paint scheme. I'm not really too big of a fan of this one, but you can get a better idea of the actual sculpt on this one due to the brighter paint. It really brings out the detailing, I think, a little bit better. That's kind of neat looking, I will say that. Nice little design up here on the top of the head. But overall, again, this is a brighter paint scheme, something that's a bit more unrealistic to me. The sculpt is still the same. It looks okay, but it's still not that great. I definitely like the other Pteranodon better. Then we've got the juvenile Triceratops, and you can see that the eyes are really poorly painted, but the actual sculpt looks half decent. It's a fairly appealing looking Triceratops. Lots of nice detailing and sculpt on this one as well. Really not half bad as far as the sculpt goes. There's some good skin texture and everything, some nice musculature throughout the body. And again, the paint applied looks pretty decent, but it has a heavy gloss on the face with the paint they used. I don't know why. I'm not a big fan of that. But overall, this one's not too sloppy and still not that bad. Here's the larger Triceratops, which I actually like quite a bit better as far as the paint goes. I think it's a little bit more appealing, a little bit more realistic, and they've done a nice dry brushing similar to what they did with the Spinosaurus. Kind of dry brush some light coloration over a gray, and I think it looks quite nice. Got a brown underbelly, lots of very nice detailing, honestly. The overall sculpt of the Triceratops is not bad, and for being a very cheap figure, it's fairly impressive. It's actually thick, it's solid too, so that's a plus. It's not a hollow figure. Not half bad. Again, pretty nice sculpt, pretty nice paint application, nothing overly flashy, fairly realistic looking, so not bad. Then you've got the Therizinosaurus, which overall I think is a very appealing looking sculpt. The paint application is even half decent as well. I actually really quite like this Therizinosaurus. Again, the paint is applied pretty naturally with an airbrush. It's a bit bright and flashy, so probably unrealistic, but at the same time, it still looks pretty good. There is definitely some bowing with the legs, and the legs are very, very stiff, but it's fairly decent as far as sculpt and detail goes. I wouldn't say it's a bad Therizinosaurus at all. Really nice. Even the detail on the feathers is pretty good. It's fairly impressive considering how cheap these figures are to buy. The eyes are painted pretty badly, actually really, really badly on this side. But it's impressive for how cheap these figures are to buy, how nicely done they actually are. And then the final one is the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the larger one. Again, as always, we've got some very sloppy paint all over the teeth and the mouth. It does have an articulated jaw, so that is a plus. The eye doesn't look that bad, actually. The eye looks pretty good on that side. Kind of good on this side. It's the same similar style as the Triceratops and Spinosaurus, where they have a dark coloration, like a brown, and then they've dry brushed some light gray all throughout, really bringing out the sculpt and detail. And because of that, you can really see just how nice the detailing is. It's actually not bad. The nails are really sloppily painted. It's like they almost didn't even try on that one foot. But overall, from a distance, it's fairly decent looking. I think it's definitely, again, Jurassic Park inspired, as a lot of dinosaur figures are these days. It has a very Jurassic feel to the look of the Rex, but it's kind of fun. I actually like it a little bit. It is hollow. It definitely feels hollow, unlike some of the others that were solid, but it's still not terrible. As far as articulation goes on the dinosaurs, there's some leg articulation on the Triceratops. That's about it. There's nothing else that really works on the Triceratops figures. The Pteranodon has articulation in the wings, but it's just a swivel. Nothing else on these guys, although they do stand pretty good, which is definitely a plus. On the Velociraptor, you've got articulated arms, articulated legs, and a swivel tail. You also have a swivel neck. No articulated jaw, though. The Spinosaurus has an articulated jaw and articulated legs. The arms don't move, tail doesn't move. So some of them have decent articulation, some of them have very basic articulation. This bigger Triceratops does have articulation in the neck. It's got a swivel, articulation in the legs, and the tail. So that one's got a bit more than the juvenile version. The Therizinosaurus also has a swiveled neck. Arms move well. Legs are really stiff, especially the right one. But the tail itself is also on a swivel. Very stiff also. The smaller Rex has an articulated jaw that actually works pretty well, and articulated legs. No other articulation. Brachiosaurus has articulated legs also, and that's about it. The neck can move because it's bendable, but it doesn't stay in position. The Allosaurus, no articulated jaw, no arms, has an articulated neck and legs and tail. But that's it for him. As far as the Tyrannosaurus, the big one, he does have the articulated jaw, which doesn't work that great. He also actually has articulated arms and articulated legs and a swivel tail, which is really stiff, but you can see he does swivel. And then the final ones were the Stegosaurus figures, articulation in the legs, as you can see, and that's it. There's no other articulation for those either. As far as the size goes, I am not going to measure each and every one of these figures individually. I'm just going to run the tape measure across here again, similar to what I do with the minis, giving you a good idea that they are fairly decent sized. because there's just so many I can't measure each one, but I will bring in our friend the Paporex. And there he is, giving you a good idea that these figures aren't large, but they're not small. Some of them are pretty small, but even the Rex is a good bit smaller than the Paporex. This should give you a pretty good idea overall of the size of these figures. They're not gigantic, but they're not very small. They're not tiny minis or anything like that. Some of them, like the Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Spinosaurus, Pteranodon, and that one little Rex back there, are all smaller figures, and actually the one Triceratops. But the Allosaurus, the Velociraptor, Therizinosaurus, and Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the one Triceratops are a good bit bigger, more like medium-sized figures. There's no real large ones here, but some decent-sized figures. Again, Paporex here should help, hopefully, give you guys an idea of the size. So for $20, honestly, even though they're not the most beautifully sculpted or anything like that, or wonderfully painted, $20, it's not a bad deal. You got a lot of dinosaur figures, so if you're just starting out your collection and you want to build it up quick and get a whole bunch of figures, or if you're looking to get some figures to repaint actually, $20 for all of these figures is not a bad price. It's really actually quite cheap, and you get a ton of fairly decent figures, and I think with some repaints, some of these could actually look really quite beautiful. Some maybe not so much, but I don't know, it's really hit or miss. You will definitely have a big problem with the legs. They're all very badly warped, it seems, for the most part, and they're going to take a lot of the hot water cold water trick, which is basically where you get water really hot, you put the legs under it for a few seconds until the legs start to become a little bit rubbery, then you'll have to push them into place where you want them, and then put them under cold water right away, which will solidify them. It may take a few tries before it finally stays, but it should work and should help to stop them from being quite so bowed. So that is definitely a one downside, I will say, to these figures, but it's not the end of the world, because overall they do have some fairly nice sculpts, and there is a good bit of detail included. A lot of the paint applied on them looks flashy, way too flashy and a bit unrealistic, but overall it's applied fairly nicely, as long as you stay away from the eyes, teeth, and nails anyway. Once you get to those points, it's really quite sloppy, and they look pretty bad for the most part. But overall, I will say it's a fun little box of dinosaurs, and you also get the additions of that nest. Actually, there were 2 nests and some rocks and a tree and stuff, so you get those fun additions too. As far as a set for children, it's something they'll probably like, although these figures I could see potentially falling apart pretty easily if they play with them in a rough way. But at the same time, it's a whole bunch of dinosaurs for pretty cheap with some extras, so it's a pretty good deal. If you do want to buy these, I will link you on Amazon. I found them on there for about $25, but I think if you give them a search for Joyin Dinosaurs on eBay, they're about $20 or somewhere in that range, so they're a little cheaper on eBay. I'll actually try to find a link on eBay for you guys as well if you are interested in purchasing them, as that's actually where I purchased mine. So again, pretty cool box of dinosaur figures. Some are nice, some are not, but definitely worth a $20 purchase if you are interested. So go ahead, check the description, find a link to these dinosaur figures, and please like, comment, and definitely subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.